Xi Jinping, Up and Out of Poverty. Selected Speeches in Fujian. The Secretariat of the Chinese Follow-up Committee of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, Foreign Languages Press, and the Fujian People's Publishing House. First edition, 2016. Printed in the People's Republic of China. Forward. Footnote 1. The text was taken from the foreword to the Chinese edition. End of footnote 1. By Xiang Nan. Footnote 2. A native of Liancheng, Fujian Province, Xiang Nan, 1918 to 1997, worked to establish revolutionary base areas in the border regions of Fujian, Zhejiang, and Jiangxi provinces. He arrived at the Yancheng headquarters of the new Fourth Army in the spring of 1941. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, he served as secretary of the Communist Youth League of Anhui Province, secretary of the East China Bureau of the Communist Youth League, secretary of the Youth League Central Committee, the first secretary of the Fujian Provincial Party Committee, and the first political commissar of the Provincial Military Region. He served as chairman of the China Foundation for Poverty Alleviation from 1989 and later became its chief consultant. End of footnote 2. The 9 counties and cities of Ningde Prefecture constitute one of Fujian's more impoverished regions. Even though I visited all of those counties when I worked in Fujian, I always regretted not being able to help the Ningde Prefecture more than I was able to at the time. I was greatly inspired while recently reading some of the speeches and articles written by my colleague Xi Jinping while he was working in the Ningde Prefecture. I have also been fortunate enough to revisit several counties in that region lately, where I was very excited to see that the people there no longer have to worry about daily necessities. The economy is thriving, and the leadership of the Prefectural Committee of the Communist Party of China is in high spirits. All of this, to a certain extent, makes up for what I was unable to accomplish. During their nearly 2 years working in Ningde, Xi Jinping and the departments under his leadership took the lead in implementing their 4 grassroots initiatives. Footnote 3. The 4 grassroots initiatives encouraged leading officials to investigate complaints and listen to ideas at the grassroots level, to go down to the grassroots to handle official business on the spot, to work with the grassroots to conduct research and investigations, and to go down to the grassroots, to publicize the party's guiding principles and policies. Xi Jinping strongly advocated for these initiatives in 1988 while he was working in Ningde, Fujian province. End of footnote 3. Their detailed inspections and informed considerations of Ningde's own characteristics and history allowed them to make proposals firmly rooted in the local situation. They thoroughly did away with the current bad leadership habits of grandiose, empty, and formulaic speech. Even though after he moved on to new posts from Ningde, there is no doubt that the good conduct Xi Jinping practiced, has been an inspiration to his successors, as what exists today comes from the past. The strongest feature of Xi Jinping's writing from this period is that it never strays from the focus of economic development. This focus has become even clearer after Deng Xiaoping's speeches given during his recent South China inspection tour. This was not always the case, however, and for quite a long time, some people had different opinions. Prefectures, counties, cities, departments, and enterprises certainly faced daunting workloads, and some people often, consciously or unconsciously, focused their attention on tasks other than economic development in order to showcase their other achievements. Some of these tasks were undoubtedly quite important, but nevertheless we still had to take economic development and not any other issue as our ultimate goal. Too many unrelated objectives will necessarily weaken the central focus of economic development. Xi Jinping once saw that a town government office he was visiting had a wall covered in red banners with congratulations for all sorts of accomplishments except for economic development. Xi thought that while it was certainly great to be awarded such honor banners, the leadership could not elevate relatively minor tasks without focusing on the main objective. He called for everyone to join forces to make full use of the geographical advantages Ningde was blessed with and form an economic chorus, not another central task. Under his plan, Ningde finally adhered to the principle of one central task, two basic points at all times. Footnote 4. One central task, two basic points are the basis of the party line to guide policy making during the primary stage of socialism. One central task refers to economic development. Two basic points refer to the four cardinal principles and the reform and opening up policy. End of footnote 4. With Ningde's relative poverty in mind, Xi Jinping repeatedly called for bold reforms and opening up. Even though Ningde is somewhat economically disadvantaged, it lies in a coastal region right next to Taiwan and the Pacific Ocean, and it has one of China's few deep water ports. Given these features, the fastest way to resolve the persistent problems of lack of funding and talent is to speed up reforms, open up even further, increase domestic cooperation, and absorb foreign investment. We must not shy away from using outside funds and technology to develop our own resources, including Ningda's unique marine, stone, and lumber resources. This requires greater awareness of reform and opening up among officials and better business sense. No difficulty is too great as long as we are bold enough, try new things, and act first. With bolder reforms and opening up, the economy may pick up even faster, and there will be hope for lifting the region out of poverty and creating wealth. Xi Jinping has thought deeply and carefully about many issues. He is a strong proponent of the theory of water droplets drilling through rock and letting the weak hatchling be the first to fly, to encourage people to be fearless pioneers and thoroughly do away with formalism and false appearances. He wants officials to truly keep the people in their hearts. We have always believed that poverty is not something to be feared, and we should be most on guard against rushing ahead without thought and spirit. If all we do is want those above us to bail us out and complain about our unfair lot in life, how will we ever be able to eliminate poverty? We must free our mind and get down to real work. Our work must be performed one step at a time, and our experience will accumulate one step at a time. As long as we look to ourselves for the answers and become self-reliant, we will be able to cast off our fetters and move forward with ease. With persistence, even water droplets can drill through stone. Short-term projects with quick results can be great for poverty alleviation, but we cannot let ourselves be content with these and only focus on the short term. The work of poverty alleviation is a long-term task. Impoverished regions cannot make economic, societal, and environmental advances without the mindset of the foolish old man who removed the mountains, and the foolish work of trying to tame rivers and mountains. We will never emerge from poverty and backwardness. Footnote 5. Source of English translation: Mao Zedong, the foolish old man who removed the mountains. In Selected Works of Mao Zedong, Volume 3, Beijing, Foreign Languages Press, 1965, page 321. End of footnote 5. The success or failure of all work in the region is determined by the ambitions, thinking, and the working practices of those young officials in important positions who are trying to improve their backward areas. They must fully use their brains, dare to explore, and boldly push their work forward. Even if some ideas are not completely in line with the local situation and some methods may not produce immediate results, we must not panic. Nobody can be perfect in everything they say or do. In this sense, Xi Jinping is no exception. The officials in our local prefectures, cities, counties, and townships can gain much insight from this pamphlet. How can a weak hatchling bird be the first to fly? Thoughts from inspecting the 9 counties of Ningde, September 1988. Impoverished Ningde Prefecture is undoubtedly just a weak hatchling bird in the vast space for developing the commodity economy. I arrived in Ningde in June to take up my new post, and from early July to early August, several of my colleagues joined me in a tour of 9 counties of Ningde, as well as neighboring Wenzhou, Kangnan, and Yueqing in southern Jiaxing province. As we visited, contemplated, and studied, our thoughts never strayed far from this question. In developing a commodity production economy in which fish can leap at will in a boundless sea and birds can soar free beneath the limitless sky, can this hatchling bird of Ningde be the first to fly, and how can we make it so? Footnote 1. In Book 30 of A General Source for Remarks on Poetry, the Song Dynasty's Ruan Yue quoted a line from Chats on Past and Contemporary Poetry. During the reign of the Tang Dynasty, Emperor Da Li, the Buddhist monk Yuan Lan, inscribed this poem on a piece of bamboo. Fish frolic in the vast sea, and birds soar in the open skies. This poem expressed the monk's magnanimity and animated language. It was later revised. Fish can leap at will in a boundless sea, and birds can soar free beneath the limitless sky. It is a metaphor for the ability to move without constraints or display one's abilities freely. End of footnote 1. 1. Being the first to take flight. Ningde is almost a world to itself, hard to get to, little information from the outside world, and an economy based on small-scale farming. Its commodity economy has developed even more sluggishly than other impoverished regions. When you mention Ningde, 5 words come to people's minds: old, ethnic minority, remote, island, impoverished. In such a place that so much resembles a weak hatchling bird, how can we even dare to think about being the first to take flight? In my eyes, not only can we talk about it, we must loudly proclaim it. Impoverished regions cannot have impoverished ideals. Being at peace with our lot, finding contentment in poverty, waiting for government aid, relying on financial grants, requiring poverty allowances, blaming everyone but ourselves. All of these concepts must be swept out with the trash. The weak hatchling bird can be the first to fly, and the poorest can be the first to become rich. But to be the first to take flight or to become rich, we must first have such a concept in mind. Therefore, I believe that the most pressing task at the moment is for our party members, officials, and people to free their minds, update their thinking, and tell everyone that the weak hatchling bird can be the first to take flight and the poorest can be the first to become rich. This will allow us to break through old ways of looking at problems and do things in a positive frame of mind. Many of our colleagues put their hopes in the state allocating more funds and arranging for more raw materials in their planning. Like General Han Xian's need for soldiers, the more the better. Generally speaking, it isn't a bad thing to have someone watching over you. This mindset is understandable, but we must also get one thing straight. We must see ourselves as the key to resolving shortages of raw materials and funds, and this changing responsibility is the prime concept of being the first to take flight. We must not look to others for the answers to all of our problems, but rather to ourselves. For example, we can look to uncovering potential and reducing costs. We can build a stable network for material assistance through seeking domestic cooperation and foreign investment, and we can encourage counties to formulate preferential policies. There is no reason why impoverished regions cannot make extraordinary gains in unconfined areas and areas to their advantage. That is to say, it is entirely possible for impoverished regions to rely on their own efforts, policies, strengths, and advantages in certain areas to be the first to take flight and make up for the disadvantages brought about by poverty. There is no dearth of examples of this. While many major electronics companies in large cities and even in special economic zones suffer from excessive capacity and find it difficult to pick up their operations, our impoverished region, Xiapu, continually produces its own electronic massage devices and special medical devices for men. They are in high demand, with good reputation in China and overseas. Clearly, we cannot say that Xiapu has better conditions than the large cities and special economic zones, nor can we say that its industrial environment is better than what other major electronics companies have. This only goes to show that not only is it possible to be the first to take flight, it is realistic. To impoverished regions, the concepts of commodities, markets, and competition are entirely new, and they all should be integral factors of wanting to be the first to take flight. Without understanding these concepts, no matter how loudly we shout about it, the commodity economy will fall flat. Here, I want to especially emphasize the notion of building a commodity economy, and we cannot completely separate politics from economy. The 5 leading departments of all counties must arrange their own departmental work based on developing the economy. We must have an economic chorus. It has already been 10 years since the 3rd plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee made the decision to shift the focus of the party's work onto economic development. But many of our colleagues still act like they don't see what is right in front of their eyes when they encounter specific problems and cannot differentiate what is primary from what is secondary. Footnote 2. This expression refers to obvious matters that are right under one's nose and should have been handled with the proper attention, yet are forgotten and treated with neglect. It is based on a line from the Tang Dynasty writer Du Mu, 803 to 853, in his poem Climbing Chizhu's Nine-Peak Tower with Zhang-Hu. It reads, "They fail to see to the lashes growing before their eyes." End of footnote 2. Economic development is our primary theme, and the economy cannot be developed without us bearing it in mind day and night. Many of our township colleagues said that non-economic work has taken up most of their energy, and I believe that we must quickly put a stop to this. Most of the energy and time of township officials must be spent on economic work. The coastal province of Guangdong was one of the first to open up, and it acted quickly and made brilliant achievements. The most important thing was that everyone throughout Guangdong wanted to be the first to take flight, and with such a strong desire, they were eventually able to fly. 2. Flying across the sea. Once we can fly, of course we must strive to fly across the sea, weather the storms of the international market, and live through commodity economy in the world. Of the 4 coastal counties of our prefecture, Ningde and Xiapu counties have been on the list of opening up counties, and Fuan and Fuding are doing everything they can to get on the list. The first 2 counties already have basic policies for opening up. Of course, this only shows the direction we are going in, and whether or not we can keep on opening up will depend on our own work. We must clearly recognize this and have a sense of urgency. How do we develop the opening up counties? This is a general question. Due to differences in time, location, and production factors, the models of opening up will be varied, and we cannot simply copy the methods used by special economic zones or opening up cities. We must forge our own suitable path based on our own actual situation. Opening up requires a process of preparation, such as improving the investment environment, creating conditions for foreign exchange earnings, and making more products that can be sold overseas. Let's take the investment environment as an example. Even though we cannot compete with cities and developed regions in terms of water, power, gas, roads, and bridges, we can at least get off to a good start. Some say that we have to start over from scratch, but I disagree. We must come up with our strategy based on the regional situation and regional strengths. We must rely on the current layout of our cities and towns, and we cannot depart from our current urban living facilities to start over and build a new development zone. This might work in other places, but not in our prefecture. The reason is simple. Our finances simply won't support such a plan. Since we lack hardware, we can turn to software. There is much we can do in building our soft environment. Foreign companies that invest in China complain the most about poor efficiency, too many authorities, and authorities passing the buck all too often. If we look at general conditions such as input, output, and cost, our prefecture cannot rival other places. But this is all the more reason to build our soft environment. Such software effort is a superb technique that weak hatchling impoverished regions can use to soar across the sea. We should not imitate the big cities and set up giant institutions, but rather take a completely new approach from the beginning. For example, we can simplify procedures, reduce fees, improve the quality of service, and go through one-stop registration at one window and with one official stamp, and so on. Furthermore, while resolutely following national laws and regulations, we can also focus on the local situation and consider formulating our own rules and regulations that offer genuine protection of the legitimate rights and interests of foreign companies. Without a sense of security, foreign companies will not come, and those who are already here will leave. I must remind everyone here that we cannot turn foreign invested enterprises into state-operated enterprises. We must truly allow foreign companies to have their own production management that follows international norms. We will know that our software effort has succeeded, and we will be able to fly across the sea after our message gets out and we start seeing people willing to travel the rugged terrain for hundreds of miles to come to our impoverished region, begin investing, and start setting up businesses. 3. The bird fills out with strong wings. To make the weak hatchling bird be the first to take flight, fly fast, and fly high, we must explore a local path suitable for economic development. The key to what kind of development path Ningde takes lies in how the wheels of agriculture and industry turn. Ningde mainly relies on agriculture for a living, and while we are poor because of agriculture, we can also only become rich through agriculture as well. The small farming economy cannot make one rich, nor does it have much of a future. Instead, we must turn to big agriculture. That is, agriculturally, on the mountain one lives off the mountain, and by the sea one lives off the sea. While guaranteeing food production, we must rely on mountains, seas, and paddy fields, develop rural enterprises, and have an all-round development of agriculture, forestry, livestock, sideline products, and fishery. To live off the mountain, we must look to forestry, tea, and fruit. The forest grows as soon as the land is set aside. Footnote 3. Closing off mountains to encourage afforestation is a measure that ensures forests have the opportunity to grow. Mountainous areas that sprout young growth or have the potential to develop into forests cannot be used for pasture, timber, or fuel during a fixed period. End of footnote 3. In Zhuoning County, Huang Jiefang's family has a nice forest that has provided us with some ideas for developing forestry industry. Our prefecture has a great advantage in producing tea leaves, and it accounts for 1/4 of all production in the province. Currently, per hectare yield is low, and our main efforts should be on increasing the per unit yield. while also focusing on rebuilding old tea plantations. There is also a great future in fruit planting, and in particular, we should greatly develop the fruit that Ningde specializes in, such as the late maturing lychees in Xiapu and Ningde, four-season pomelos of Funing, Furong plums of Fuan, and Yo Nai plums of Gutian. To live off the sea, apart from continuing marine fishing, tidal flat aquaculture also has potential and can increase per unit yield. The key to developing tidal flat aquaculture is how the feed industry can meet the demand of aquaculture farms. Township enterprises are important pillars of the rural collective economy, and they should take advantage of local conditions. That is, the need to process and utilize agriculture and sideline products. Labor-intensive enterprises that serve large urban industries should mostly be collectively run to absorb much of the surplus labor force, and the rural industry structure should be properly adjusted to let more farmers get on the path toward prosperity. Industry is the driving force for developing our prefecture. For industry, the relationship between speed and benefits must be properly handled. Both must be firmly focused, and one cannot be neglected for the other. Once the benefits start to come in, the speed can be increased, and this is the only way to quickly shrink the gap between it and other cities. We must develop industry using local resources, but we also should not blindly oppose starting new projects. We can start projects as soon as opportunities present themselves, as long as there are good benefits from the investments and loans, and as long as the products can be sold well on the market. We should also consider developing the processing industry with non-local resources. Of course, we should not start any project that doesn't deliver good benefits. And we must absolutely not allow the short-term behavior of blindly starting projects just to acquire officialdom vanity. We must emphasize the benefits of economies of scale. For example, the electronic massagers and medical devices produced in Xiapu and toys in Fuding have both good economic and social benefits. We must do all we can to increase their output and scale. They can only occupy a greater market share by reaching the proper scale. We can also consider establishing an industrial project database that is constantly updated. As long as there are good projects, there will be funding. Funds can be raised from multiple channels, and more joint stock enterprises can be formed. Poverty alleviation is another important task in Ningde Prefecture. It has a large impoverished area, and after 3 years of poverty alleviation, there have been some heartening changes. But we should clearly see that poverty alleviation is still at a low level and still unstable. This is a long-term, arduous task, and we must make mental preparations for a protracted battle. Poverty alleviation requires a change of attitude and mentally wearing away at the poverty mentality. We should not be constantly harping on about poverty. Some townships that are developing pretty well include themselves in the scope of impoverished regions. This can only have a negative effect. Furthermore, we must clearly lay out our poverty alleviation measures, and whether it is planting and cultivation, animal husbandry, or the processing industry, We should strive for one product for each village. Each village should focus on a specialized product. Hoiyang Village in Fuan County raised village-wide average incomes to over renminbi 800 per person through planting koyo grapes, thereby casting off the shackles of poverty. Mushrooms and tea leaves are important poverty alleviation projects for suburban farmers, and the departments in each county must provide technical support to bring farmers from poverty to prosperity. Third, we must combine poverty alleviation with rural socialist cultural progress. Some farmers in Shoning County live alongside their livestock in squalid conditions, and the counties must help these farmers plan and build their rural residences to separate people from their livestock. The vicious cycle of poverty, unsanitary conditions, disease, poverty must be broken. Fourth, a portion of poverty alleviation funds must be used to support rural, collective, economic entities to give us the stamina needed for poverty alleviation. For households hit hard by years of disease and natural disasters, we must give them appropriate relief and help them develop production projects that they are capable of. The Shay people of Ningde account for 40% of the country's Shay population and 70% of the provinces. Most of the Shay people live in remote mountainous areas and are relatively impoverished. Working with ethnic minority groups is a fundamental task for us, and a basic part of our party's ethnic policies is to strive for equality and unity for ethnic groups. Ethnic work is rooted in developing the economy, as true ethnic equality can only come with a good economy. We must formulate special preferential policies for supporting the rural development of areas inhabited by minorities and offer them better assistance. We must focus on training minority officials, developing and documenting ethnic culture, and providing good secondary education to minorities. All of this will gradually help the weak hatchling birds fill out with strong wings and create the necessary conditions for being the first to take flight. 4. Lofty ambitions. Without the lofty ambition of steadfast integrity and constantly serving the people, it is difficult to maintain long-term flight and soar high. Strictly governing the party and governance with integrity are linked to the success and failure of reform and opening up, and they are continually the lifelines of the party. We absolutely cannot allow people to seek personal gain from the power they have been given. The principal aim of being an official is to contribute and serve. Both things you desire cannot be obtained at once. Footnote 4. This expression is based on the following line from Book 6a of the Mencius. I desire fish, and I also desire bear's paws. If I cannot have both of them, I will give up fish and take bear's paws. Source of English translation, Mencius, Book 6a, in Mencius. Translator Irene Bloom, New York, Columbia University Press, 2009, page 127. End of footnote 4. Officials cannot also covet wealth. Don't extend your hand the extended hand will be caught. Footnote 5. This expression is from Chun Yi's poem, 7-character verse, Don't Extend Your Hand, in Selected Poems of Chun Yi. It admonishes those who harbor evil intentions. Don't extend your hand. The extended hand will be caught. The party and the people are watching. It is difficult to escape the public glare. A native of Lezhi, Sichuan Province, Chun Yi, 1901 to 1972, was a Marxist, military strategist, and proletarian revolutionary. He co-founded and commanded the Chinese People's Liberation Army. End of footnote 5. Of course, while advocating a clean government with integrity, we must also differentiate illegal behavior and discipline violations from mistakes made in the course of reform and opening up. It is important to keep up the enthusiasm of reformers and encourage officials to be the first to act for the people's causes. We must both dare to punish wrongdoing and be good at providing incentives. And we must always make sure we have good policies. As for Ningde Prefecture, I am fully confident that through our tireless hard work, we can create a miracle of the weakling hatch bird being the first to take flight in many areas. Economic Chorus, September 1988. Each song, each tune has a theme. When people hear the familiar theme, they know which song or tune it is. The theme is the subject of the song as well as its soul. There is a theme, too, in the various aspects of work in a place. Socialist economic development. Once, on an inspection of a township in Ningde, I saw that the local government office's walls were hung with numerous award banners for achieving excellence and being number one in many areas of work. Unfortunately, however, none of them had anything to do with economic development. Here, it is worth asking, can we say that there was a theme? I think not. Hanging up so many award banners without one for economic development was not very impressive. To put it more politely, it reflected working hard without performing a true service, working without setting priorities and sticking to the fundamentals is simply tinkering. To sing in unison, a choir must focus on the theme and the rhythm. The same is true of economic work. If every entity only stresses the importance of its own work, each following its own score and singing a different tune, the performance will inevitably fail. So, we must advocate an economic chorus. Such a chorus must have a conductor. The conductor at the local level is the local party committee and government. Modern society has entered an era of large economics and mass production. Attention must be paid to all aspects of planning, research, production, transportation, sales, and service. The failure of any aspect will result in the interruption of economic activity. A weak link will become a bottleneck in development, affecting normal activity. The work of the various departments and units participating in the chorus is quite complex, with different instruments and voices. The big strings planged like the swift falling rain. The little strings went buzz like gentle whispers. Footnote 1. See Bai Juyi, Song of the Lute, a Tang Dynasty poet. Bai Juyi, 772 to 846, was from Taiyuan, Shaanxi province, and later moved to Xiagui, north of modern Weinan, Shaanxi province. His most celebrated poems include Song of Lasting Pain, The Old Charcoal Cellar, and Song of the Lute. Source of English translation, Bai Juyi, Song of the Lute, in Po Chui, Selected Poems. Translator, Burton Watson, New York, Columbia University Press, 2000. Page 79. End of footnote 1. Nevertheless, they must follow the conducting of the party and the government. We must all sing together, focusing on the theme of economic work, no matter whether the chorus is classical or pop, as long as there is a theme and a rhythm, it has an artistic appeal. Otherwise, with the party committee singing one tune, the People's Congress singing another, the People's Political Consultative Conference singing a different tune, and the government singing yet another, there can be nothing but cacophony. And this place will certainly not sing its song well. Footnote 2. Si Chiu Chi, Letter to Chen Bo-zhi, a native of Wucheng, Wuxing Prefecture, modern Huzhou, Zhejiang. Chiu Chi, 464 to 508, was a writer from the southern Liang dynasty. He composed one of the finest examples of parallel prose from that time, Letter to Chen Bo-zhi, in order to persuade the general Chen Bo-zhi to leave the state of Wei and return to the state of Liang. End of footnote 2. An economic chorus requires coordination and cooperation. It will not do to have a theme only, but not work together, or even worse, engage in internal friction and discord. We must mobilize enthusiasm in each department and every aspect. Since it is a chorus, all departments must consciously cooperate and take the initiative to coordinate. This is not a simple 1 + 1 = 2 formula. What we want is 1 + 1 is greater than 2, which is often called the benefit of integration. Let's compare it to a soccer match. In high-level world soccer competition today, focusing only on personal skills and individual footwork is no longer the prevailing trend. Scoring relies mainly on the organic cooperation of the players, and coordination is now an important aspect of tactical awareness on the soccer field. A famous soccer commentator said with regard to Argentina's painful loss in the 12th World Cup final, "As a star player, Maradona focused only on the individual and not the collective. The individualistic style of the Argentine star ultimately resulted in their loss of this World Cup championship." Soccer fans often criticize some players for dribbling too much because they dislike it when players show off their own skills, which damages organic cooperation and misses opportunities to score. In local economic work, all departments at different levels, upper and lower, related and unrelated, must form an integrated whole. Each department has relative independence but is part of the whole, and cannot be separate from the whole or cut off relations with other departments. To see only one hair of a thoroughbred horse is not to know its shape. To see only one color of a painting is not to know its beauty. Footnote 3. See Shi Jiao, the Shizi, a legalist from the Warring States period. Shi Jiao, circa 390 to 330 BC, is believed to have been a teacher to the statesman Shang Yang. Shi Jiao advocated establishing a legal system upon which to rule the land. His book, the Shi Zhi, was banned and eventually disappeared as a result of the Han Dynasty practice of venerating only Confucian arts. People from later generations, including the Tang Dynasty's Wei Zheng and the Qing Dynasty's Zhang Zong Shun, worked to reconstruct the text. Source of English translation, Shi Jiao, fragments in Shi Zhi, China's first syncretist. Translated by Paul Fisher, New York, Columbia University Press, 2012. Page 166. End of footnote 3. Any department acting as a lone wolf is working against the integrated strategy. Every official should be aware that if you have a place in the chorus, you have a duty to cooperate. For the economic chorus to have strong artistic value, it must adhere to choral discipline as well as to technique. Each department and every individual must therefore be conscious of the overall strategy, with the same goal, concerted efforts, and a unified voice. We will produce a melodious, resonant, and beautiful song. The basic proficiency of officials. Maintaining close ties with the people. January 1989. The unique geographical locations and specific economic development conditions of impoverished areas mean that development and change in those places can only be a gradual process. To fundamentally alter poverty and backwardness, the people there must engage in a long-term, unremitting effort with an entrepreneurial spirit of tenacity and dedication, like water droplets drilling through rock. To this end, officials in impoverished areas have a more arduous task than others. What kind of basic proficiency, then, is required of these officials? To answer this question, we must look at the larger question of the basic conditions for development and change in poor areas. What does the development of impoverished areas rely on? Most fundamentally, there are only two things. First, the party's leadership, and second, the power of the people. The party's leadership is embodied in the party's guidelines, principles, and policies, which are executed by our officials. Only when they go out among the people and maintain close ties with them can officials better implement the party's principles and policies. This is one aspect of the answer. The other aspect is that the people need leadership. Without leadership, we can neither increase or sustain the enthusiasm of the people. In order to lead, we must have credibility. There can be no real leadership without credibility. Where does a leader's credibility come from? It does not come from relying on higher authorities, exerting power, or using gimmicks. It is only built gradually by working for the people wholeheartedly, with dedication and perseverance. A leader must be proficient. Where does such proficiency come from? It comes from understanding and mastering objective laws, which is embedded in practice among the people. To improve our proficiency as leaders, we must look to the grassroots and absorb our nutrients from working among the people, obtaining genuine knowledge. So, whether we are developing the party's leadership role or stimulating the enthusiasm of the people, we require our officials at all levels to maintain close ties with the people. This is a very important basic proficiency for officials who should practice it diligently. On our way forward, there will be many problems and difficulties. Exactly where should we start to solve the problems, and on what should we rely to overcome the difficulties? We can discuss different ideas and methods from various angles. The fundamental thing, however, is to mobilize and rely on the people. This requires our leading officials at all levels to become deeply involved with the people in real situations, always coming from the people and going to the people. An official who does not understand this or does not persist in doing so accordingly will not possess such basic proficiency and is not a competent leader. Harvard University professor John King Fairbank posed a question in his book, The Great Chinese Revolution. As of 1928, China's future seemed to be with the KMT. How come the situation was reversed 20 years later? Footnote 1. John K. Fairbank, The Great Chinese Revolution, 1800 to 1985. New York, Harper and Row, 1986, page 218. End of footnote 1. His answer was, the KMT leadership was older and had become worn out. Footnote 2, Ibid. And alienated the Chinese people. Footnote 3, Ibid, page 263. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Communist Party of China, in Fairbank's view, were fervently devoted to their cause, and they pioneered on the cutting edge of a great national upheaval. Footnote 4, Ibid, page 210. He recognized the problem of the common aspiration of the people, which is rare for a bourgeois scholar. His words certainly point to the root cause of victory in the Chinese Revolution, the party's close relationship with the people. The patriot and democracy advocate Huang Yangpei, footnote 5, a native of Chuansha, now part of Shanghai's Pudong New Area, Jiangsu Province. Huang Yanpei, 1878 to 1965, was an educator and democratic revolutionary. End of footnote 5. Huang Yanpei said to Mao Zedong, Footnote 6. A native of Xiangtan, Hunan Province, Mao Zedong, 1893 to 1976, was a Marxist, Chinese proletarian revolutionary, strategist, and theorist. He was one of the principal founders of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, and the People's Republic of China. He was the leader of all ethnic groups in China and the principal founder of Mao Zedong thought. End of footnote 6. Huang Yanpei said to Mao Zedong, "Few people, families, groups, localities, or even nations have the capacity to break free of this cycle. At first, they carefully focus on every issue, and everyone exerts their best effort. Conditions may be quite difficult at the time, and they must struggle for their very survival. As things gradually change for the better, they gradually lose their focus. Complacency then arises, spreads from a few to the many, and becomes the norm. Even with a great effort, the situation cannot be reversed." Huang hoped that the members of the Communist Party would be able to find a new way forward to escape the historical cycle in which the rulers in the past had moved from hard work and innovation to becoming isolated from the people. Mao Zedong immediately answered, "We have found a new path, and we can break this cycle. This new path is democracy and the mass line. When the people are allowed to monitor the government, it dare not become lax. When everyone bears responsibility, the death of the ruler will not cause the government to collapse." Mao Zedong summarized the theory and practice of the party and made the great and solemn call to serve the people wholeheartedly, which was written into the party constitution as the sole purpose of our party. Footnote 7. Source of English translation: Mao Zedong. Quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong. Beijing, Foreign Languages Press, 1966. Page 170. End of footnote 7. We can see that maintaining close ties with the people is determined by the very nature and mission of our party, and it is also an excellent tradition and style forged and upheld throughout its long revolutionary struggle. We must understand from this high vantage point why officials must work hard to practice the basic proficiency of maintaining close ties with the people. Advocating close ties with the people is of even more practical significance today. Generally speaking, our party and officials have a good relationship with the people. But in recent years, we have also seen some officials engaging in bureaucratism, subjectivism, formalism, individualism, abuse of power, and other corrupt practices. In some cases, these have become rather serious problems. The people have reacted strongly to it, raising strenuous objections. As early as 50 years ago, Zhou Enlai warned the entire party, "Defeats in battle are less to be feared than the low morale of the people. If we lose popular support, the situation will be irretrievable." Footnote 8. Zhou Enlai, 1898 to 1976, was born in Huai'an, Jiangsu Province. His ancestral home was Shaoxing, Zhejiang Province. He was a Marxist, Chinese proletarian revolutionary, statesman, military strategist, and diplomat. He was one of the principal leaders of the Communist Party of China, the People's Republic of China, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army, which he co-founded. End of footnote 8. Footnote 9. Source of English translation: Zhou Enlai, The Present Crisis in the War of Resistance and the Tasks to be Undertaken in Pursuing the War in North China. In Selected Works of Zhou Enlai, Beijing, Foreign Languages Press, 1981, page 101. End of footnote 9. Returning to the main text. If we do not focus on close ties with the people, we will lose the blood and flesh relationship between our party and the people established during the difficult years of China's Revolutionary War. Success in governance lies in following the hearts of the people. Failure lies in opposing the hearts of the people. Footnote 10. Source of English translation: Guanzi, Mu Min, on Shepherding the People, in Guanzi, Political, Economic, and Philosophical Essays from Early China. A Study and Translation. Translated by W.A. Rickett, Boston, Chung and Sui, 2001, page 54. End of footnote 10. Our party has been in power for over 40 years of peacetime. The danger of becoming isolated from the people has greatly increased compared to during wartime, and the potential harm of such isolation to the party and the people is also much greater. At present, we are placing great emphasis on social stability. What is our most important safeguard? It is the people, the tens of millions, who wholeheartedly support the four cardinal principles and reform and opening up. Footnote 11. The four cardinal principles are to adhere to the socialist path, adhere to the people's democratic dictatorship, adhere to the leadership of the Communist Party of China, and adhere to Marxism-Leninism and Mao Zedong thought. These principles are the foundation of the state and the political cornerstone for the survival and development of the party and the nation. End of footnote 11. Governance lies in reassuring the people. Reassuring the people lies in observing their suffering. Footnote 12. This is based on a line in Zhang Zhuzheng's Memorial to the Emperor proposing taxes be waived to reassure the people. It reads, "The primary task of government is to reassure the people. The way to reassure the people is to understand their suffering." A native of Jiangling in Huguang Province, modern Jingzhou, Hubei Province, Zhang Zhujiang, 1525 to 1582, was a Ming Dynasty statesman. End of footnote 12. This ancient saying about governance is still worth drawing from today. As long as we understand and address the suffering of the people, dispelling the suffering of the people like treating your own severe illness. Footnote 13. Si Suzhi, Letter to the Emperor. A native of Meishan, Meizhou, now in Sichuan province. Su Zhe, 1039 to 1112, was a prose writer from the northern Song dynasty. He is remembered as one of the 8 prose masters of the Tang and Song. End of footnote 13. As long as we truly represent the fundamental interests of the people and take as our own mind the mind of the people will gather around us, and we need not worry about social instability. Footnote 14. See chapter 49 of Dao De Jing. A thinker from the spring and autumn period, 770 to 476 BC, Laozi was the founder of Taoism. He is believed to have come from Ku County in the state of Chu, east of modern Luyi, Hainan Province, Woyang, Anhui Province. He proposed, "The way models itself on that which is naturally so. Something and nothing produce each other, govern by doing nothing," and many other simple examples of dialectical thinking. Page 8258. He is the reputed author of Dao De Jing, also translated as Tao Te Ching, which is also known as Laozi and 5,000 character text by Laozi. Source of English translation, Laozi, Tao Te Ching, translated by D.C. Lau. Harmonsworth, Penguin Books Limited, 1972. Page 110. End of footnote 14. As the poet Gu Yanwu of the Ming Dynasty wrote, "In the mountains Guojian lived, his countrymen their lives would give." Footnote 15. A native of Kunshan, Jiangsu Province, Gu Yanwu, 1613 to 1682, was a thinker, Confucian scholar, historian, geographer, and phonologist. Together with Huang Zongxi and Wang Fuzhi, he is considered one of the 3 greatest Confucian scholars from the late Ming, 1368 to 1644, and early Qing, 1644 to 1911, dynasties. He developed a new method of scholarly research and was venerated for carrying on the heritage and paving the way for future generations. Honored with the title Founding Father of Simple and Plain Learning, he spent his last years studying the classics and developing the field of textual criticism. End of footnote 15. Footnote 16. See Gu Yanwu's poem, Autumn Hills. End of footnote 16. Returning to the main text. He meant that Guojian, the king of Yue, lived in the Kuaji Mountains and patiently suffered hardship to build up strength against the invading neighbor state of Wu, winning the trust of the people, who then became willing to sacrifice themselves for him. The fundamental interests of the feudal monarch were contrary to those of the people, but when he arrived among the people, showed willingness to stand up for them and desired to share their joys and sorrows to some extent, the people were ready to die for him. The fundamental interests of our party's officials conform with those of the people. So long as we stay close to the people and truly share their pains and concerns, we will certainly reaffirm our close ties with the people and win their hearts and minds. Party members and officials must have close ties with the people. This is not just a slogan, but should be translated into real action. In view of our actual situation, the most important things we can do now for close ties with the people are to follow the mass line, run the party with strict discipline, and do solid work for the people. To follow the mass line, we must first have a mass viewpoint. What truly is within will be manifested without. Footnote 17. See the Great Learning. Part of the Confucian canon, the Great Learning expounds on the relationship between the self-cultivation of individuals and the stability of society. Originally included in the Book of Rites, it was extracted during the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279, as a standalone book. Along with the Doctrine of the Mean, the Analects, and Mencius, it is considered one of the four books. Source of English translation, Zhengzi, The Great Learning, in the Four Books, translated by James Legge. New York, Paragon Book Reprint Corporation, 1966, page 324. Reprinted from the Four Books, Shanghai, 1923 edition. End of footnote 17. With a mass viewpoint, close ties with the people will become a conscious act. Second, we must frequently go in depth to the grassroots, deep down among the people, and have more and wider channels of contacting with them. This year, we will adopt 3 measures in the Ningde Prefecture. The first is to have prefectural and county leaders go to the grassroots to set up an on-site office. The second is for leadership at all levels to establish a public reception day system. And the third is for leading officials to establish special links with grassroots units. I believe that, through these measures, we will not only further the implementation of our plans, but also forge closer relationships between officials and the people, improve our working practices, and enhance the sense of responsibility and mission among leading officials at all levels. Most fundamental to governing the party with strict discipline is to gain the people's trust and support through upright practices to restore and develop the party's fine way of conduct. It is very important for party members and officials to be incorruptible as well as diligent. Throughout Chinese history, there have been many examples of honest and hard-working officials. The ancient statesman and strategist Zhuge Liang, who strove humbly to do his best until death, required himself not to allow himself or his family to have extra possessions in or out of the household. Footnote 18. A native of Yangdu, Langya, south of modern Yinan, Shandong Province, Zhuge Liang, 181 to 234, was a statesman and military strategist in the state of Shu Han during the Three Kingdoms period, 220 to 280. Later generations honored him with the title Marshal Marquis Zhuge, with the determination to perform his duties until his last breath. He personifies loyalty and wisdom in traditional Chinese culture. End of footnote 18. Footnote 19. See Zhuge Liang. Later memorial to launch a campaign. End of footnote 19. Footnote 20. See Zhuge Liang, Memorial to Emperor Liu Shan. End of footnote 20. Returning to the main text. The Song Dynasty scholar official, Sima Guang, desired to sacrifice himself for his country and attend personally to public matters, working day and night. Footnote 21. Sima Guang, 1019 to 1086, was a minister and historian in the Northern Song Dynasty, 960 to 1127. He was from Sushui Township, Xia County, Shaanxi Province, now in Shanxi Province. He compiled the Comprehensive Mirror for the Aid of Government, which was the first general history of ancient China to be organized as a chronicle. It documented 1,362 years of history, beginning with the 23rd year of King Wei Li of Zhou's reign, 403 BC, and ended with the reign of Emperor Shizong of later Zhou, 959. End of footnote 21. Footnote 22. See biography of Sima Guang in History of the Song. The History of the Song was compiled by the Yuan dynasty's Tuo et al. It recorded the history of the Song dynasty in the form of biographies and is considered an essential reference for any study of the Song dynasty. End of footnote 22. Returning to the main text. He was indifferent to material things, with no special interest in them, and wore coarse clothing and ate poor food until the end of his life. Footnote 23. See biography of Sima Guang in History of the Song. End of footnote 23. Footnote 24. Ibid. End of footnote 24. Returning to the main text. If feudal officials were capable of this, who says that our proletarian officials are not? The older generation of proletarian revolutionaries, as represented by Chairman Mao Zedong, were models of honesty and diligence. Our officials at all levels must learn from the older generation of proletarian revolutionaries and strive to be incorruptible and diligent without complaint of poverty or hardship. Footnote 25. This is an old adage that was written in the form of a couplet and displayed in an accounting room at the offices of the Niexiang County government in Hainan Province. The first line reads, "Be incorruptible and diligent without complaint of poverty or hardship." The second line reads, "Value sound advice and implement sensible ideas." End of footnote 25. In this way, we can always be rooted in the people. To do good deeds for the people, we must be in a constant, down-to-earth way for a better result. The people are the most realistic. They not only want to hear what you say, they also want to see how you do it. They not only want to hear your nice singing, they want to see your nice performance. The impoverished region is backwards. With a weak economic foundation, the people there have many difficulties that need to be solved. We have no choice but to assess our strengths and do what we can, striving to do good deeds for the people. On many issues, it is impossible to do as people would expect. But as long as we do a few real things for the people each year, they will wholeheartedly support us and voluntarily work with us to tackle the difficulties together. Some colleagues say that it needs money to do things. This is not off the mark, but it does not address the whole situation. Doing real good deeds for the people is multifaceted. At the grassroots, it is resolving practical difficulties for people in work and life. It is going to the countryside to promote the party's rural policies, improving education, and resolving people's concerns. It is helping to strengthen grassroots party building and promote rural economic development. It is also conducting surveys and case studies and summing up the experience to guide our work. To do real good deeds, we must focus on broadening our vision and freeing our minds. First, we must have a dialectical understanding of doing real good deeds. It does not simply mean handing out money and materials. We need to do real deeds for material development, but also for intellectual and cultural progress. Second, we must know where to focus. We must focus on the people's most urgent problems in work and life. The hot and difficult issues attracting the greatest public concern are where we should strive the most to resolve. We cannot evade the hard issues and focus on the easy ones, concentrate on trivial matters while neglecting important ones, or avoid tough problems. Third, we must improve our proficiency in doing real good deeds, focus on doing practical things rationally, and promote scientific thinking and reasoning in the process. In assessing whether we are doing something meaningful and valuable, we must consider not only the immediate needs of the people, but also whether there will be unintended consequences, whether it will solve one problem but leave 10 regrets. For example, if we build a dike, the problem of pedestrian and car traffic will be solved. But if there is no water flow, we have destroyed the ecological balance. If we extensively use geothermal water, the people will be able to take therapeutic baths more easily and be happy, but structures on the ground surface may sink, bringing about more intractable problems. We should never do such stupid things. Not expending useless efforts or engaging in meaningless activity should be our motto for doing real deeds for the people. Footnote 26. See the chapter on maintaining restraint in Guanzi, compiled by the Western Han Dynasty's Liu Xiang. Parts of Guangzi were written by scholars from the Jixia Academy under the name of Guanzhong during the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BC. A native of Pai, modern Pai County, Jiangsu Province, Liu Xiang, circa 77 to 6 BC, was a Confucian scholar, bibliographer, and writer from the Western Han Dynasty. Guanzhong, unknown to 645 BC, was from Yingshan. He was a statesman for the state of Qi during the early spring and autumn period. Source of English translation, Guangzi. Jin Kang on Maintaining Restraint. In Guangzi, Political, Economic, and Philosophical Essays from Early China, a Study and Translation, Volume 2. Translator, W.A. Rickett, Princeton, Princeton University Press, 1998, page 219. End of footnote 26. Fourth, we must have a holistic view, uphold party principles, and do things in accordance with policies. We must not take on projects that are only partially but not fully feasible. We cannot act for the short term, especially in pursuit of our own personal achievements, with reckless disregard for policies and regulations. In doing real deeds, we must make it a process of educating the people about patriotism, socialism, collectivism, and the party's principles and policies. In this way, people will personally experience the attention of the party and the government, as well as the superiority of the socialist system, so that they support the party and socialism wholeheartedly even more. The Glories of Ningde. Thoughts on Cultural Progress. January 1990. People do not do well without pressure. Wang Jinqi once said that a well without pressure produces no oil, and people without pressure tend to be lightweights. Footnote 1. A native of Yumen, Gansu Province, Wang Jinqi, 1923 to 1970, was called Iron Man for his work in the oil fields. He is celebrated as a champion of the working class and was a model member of the Communist Party of China. He is considered a hero to the Chinese people for his part in developing the nation's oil industry and building socialism. In addition to the material wealth his work brought the nation, he left behind great spiritual wealth in the form of his dedication, the Iron Man spirit. End of footnote 1. We recognize that Ningde is poor and clearly see that the road ahead will have many twists and turns. Poverty gives rise to the desire for change, and we can move forward in the face of adversity. The pressure of such poverty, therefore, has its benefits. Yet pressure alone does not work. If people see only the poverty without a historical perspective, a development outlook, it is easy to lose self-confidence and self-esteem. It is also easy to let outsiders have a peculiar pity and commiseration, which can be expressed as sympathy, but also as withdrawal and disdain. Such pressure is negative. So, when we discuss poverty, we should not forget to consider the glories of Ningde. When we mention pressure, let us not forget to discuss motivation. What is glorious about Ningde? I think that its beautiful rivers and mountains are a kind of glory. The area's splendid cultural traditions are also glorious. Another glory is its people's spirit of self-reliance, hard work, kindness, honesty, and simplicity. Only when conscious of our own glory can we have self-confidence, self-esteem, and the vigorous impetus to forge ahead. There is a proverb that says, Granny Wang boasts about her melons for sale, which is flavored with irony. Yet if the melons are really good and have their own special features, why not boast about them? This is also a manifestation of self-esteem and self-confidence. There is no harm in our being like Granny Wong, which is not easy. We must fully understand our wares to describe them well and make people interested. The people of Ningda must first have a good understanding of our own land. If we do not, how can we come to love Ningda, much less develop it? We can help people understand the glories of Ningda from the perspective of cultural progress. The people of Ningda have a need for self-awareness. Just being born and growing up in this place does not mean one knows it well. Some people are not very familiar with Ningda, do not understand it, and are unaware of the wonderful history of their homeland. Or, even if they do know it, they do not understand why it is the way it is, so they simply envy others and lose self-confidence. This lack of awareness is well described in a line from a poem. Why can't I tell the true shape of Mount Lushan? Because I myself am in the mountain. Footnote 2. See Su Shi, 1037 to 1101, written on the wall at West Forest Temple. Source of English translation, Su Shi, written on the wall at West Forest Temple in selected poems of Su Tung Po. Translator, Burton Watson, Port Townsend, Copper Canyon Press, 1994. Page 108. End of footnote 2. From this perspective, cultural progress means improving people's ethical and cultural lives. If the people in a place are depressed and pessimistic, we cannot say that good cultural progress has been made there. Also, as we engage in reform and opening up, we should allow more outsiders to gain a fuller understanding of Ningda. This is important because we want to show off the area to increase its attractiveness. If a place does not have much appeal to outsiders, we cannot say that reform and opening up have gone well there. This also shows that cultural progress is closely linked to reform and opening up. There are many things involved in a region's cultural progress. An important aspect is to carry forward the traditional culture of that place. Throughout the entire country, China's traditional culture has played a positive role in the continuity and development of the nation. In the history of civilization, over thousands of years, we have established a strong sense of national self-confidence. In times of both peril and prosperity, such self-confidence is the most stable ingredient of our national spirit. It is this self-confidence that has allowed the Chinese people to make it through many internal and external crises in modern history, and has brought the Chinese nation to its admirable position in the world today. Cultural progress in Ningda has the same significance. We have a clear goal: promote the nation's fine traditions through cultural undertakings to enhance our own self-confidence, and at the same time, increase the confidence of the outside world in Ningda. Such a goal requires us to have a good grasp of what is glorious about Ningda. For example, it is enriched by the culture of the region's She ethnic group. Ningda is also a region with a long period of revolutionary struggle, and its people are now seizing the opportunity to become prosperous. In addition, The region is graced by a unique landscape where the mountains meet the sea. Cultural progress requires public awareness. In discussing public awareness, there is the question of effectiveness, which involves both content and form of the message. Content is the soul and starting point of the message, but we cannot simply yell and scream about the glories of Ningde. In any culture-building activity, we should pay attention to the format of the activity and how the methods are used. If the format and methods are not acceptable to the audience, the content cannot be delivered, and the public awareness activity will have no effect. The old saying has it right. Words without elegance will not become popular. Footnote 3. See the 20th year of Duke Xiang of Lu in Zhou's Chronicles, generally attributed to Zhou Qiuming. Zhou's Chronicles, also called Zhou's Commentary on the Spring and Autumn Annals, is considered part of the Confucian canon, along with Gongyang's and Guliang's. It is one of the 3 commentaries that explain the Spring and Autumn Annals. End of footnote 3. Which formats are good? We can continue to explore this point, but should at least focus on the following. First, it must be something the people love to see and hear that also has content, not just form for form's sake. Second, it should have public appeal. Something isolated from the people will not win their enthusiasm. Third, we can spend less while doing more, focusing on cost effectiveness. Even a few coins thrown into the water make some sound and have an impact. Fourth, we should conform to people's tastes and not be too highbrow. In all aspects of cultural progress in Ningde, we can do a few representative, practical things because the time is right. I suggest that we first hold a Shay Culture Festival. We have learned a great deal about the Shay ethnic culture, including new songs, folklore, proverbs, folk music, and dance, folk tales, arts and crafts, heritage, and martial arts. The conditions are in place to organize a festival to exhibit the Shay culture. Second, I have long had the idea of making a TV program, using the modern communication tool of television to display the glorious aspects of Ningde. We can bring together beautiful images and songs, integrating audio visuals and scenes to present the flavor of Ningde with a broad appeal. We can envision combining the native and the foreign. I have developed a program with experts from the Provincial Musicians Association for making a TV documentary called Symphony of Mountains and Seas. In the Ningde region, we already have lyricists and musicians who can play their role, and we can invite singers from other places. Such creative formats can make people better acquainted with Ningde. We should have the confidence to make a television documentary to show to the whole nation. If we fully understand and broadcast the glorious aspects of Ningde, more people from other regions, provinces, and countries will learn about what Ningde has to offer. In this way, everyone will want to be a part of Ningde, love it, and pour their heart and soul into it.